anyway, so thanks so much for talking to us. It's brilliant. And I know that you're busy because you're talking tonight as part of the Birmingham Literature Festival, and we're in this wonderful new library, which is splendid. So I know you're talking tonight, I think, on the framework of civil liberties following the Second World War in the UK. So I'll leave you to talk about that, but could I just go straight into one very topical issue and see where you come down on it? So it's the Ed Miliband Daily Mail controversy, and there's a balance of rights to be had there.
There's a balance of rights, and a lot of people think that rights are all about the law and what the limits of the law should be in business. But I think rights are as much about ethics as they are about law. And I think that this has actually turned into quite an ethical, cultural dispute, which isn't a bad thing.
Right.
And we've got people from the right and left, we've got people from the male group of newspapers actually saying, I don't think it's okay to send somebody to memorial service to pick up comment about an essentially political knockabout controversy. It's bad taste, it's unkind, and this isn't a bad debate. I don't think that human rights and human dignity is just about the limits of the law. We do need legal protection as a backstop. In the end, we're trying to be sort of vaguely kind creatures who, yes, are robust individuals, but also we're able to sort of rub along together. And so obviously this is not the most pleasant episode in our national and public life, but it's not such a bad thing to have excited this kind of debate.
Okay, but it does flag up, I suppose, a fundamental difficulty, does it not, in trying to balance freedom of the press, and after all, you were on the Leveson.
Yeah, I mean, there are tensions at times, no question, between different rights and freedoms and different people's rights and freedoms. And the tension between free speech and personal privacy is a really difficult one. It's one that did come into sharp focus with the events that led up to the Leveson inquiry, and it comes up, every time someone wants to kiss and tell to the newspapers about a relationship that was, on the one hand, their story, but on the other hand, someone else's chosen private matter. But it's not always about the law. I don't actually think that this debate between the leader of the opposition and the male group is really about the law. I don't think anybody can really suggest that this is about the limits of the law. This is about what kind of a place we want to live in, how we want to treat each other, how we want to behave, and that's probably what will decide it. It'll be decided by public perceptions and public tastes. And that's not such a bad thing. When everything is about the law, then there's nothing left for us to give to each other by way of kindness, politeness and respect. And it can create a very distorted and, in a way, quite authoritarian society.
Okay, I get that. So actually it feels a bit repugnant for someone to be ferreting around in someone else's teenage diaries.
Let's be completely clear. I think that the male group have a right, or any newspaper, or any commentator, or any person who has a right to say unpleasant things about my father, or Ed Miliband's father, or me, or Ed Miliband, or anyone else within the limits of obscenity and defamation. People are entitled to their robust comment. That a right is not a duty, and just because I think I should have the right to swear at you right now, to stand up and walk out very rudely at this interview, but what would I achieve by that? I would look ridiculous, and nobody would want to listen to what I had to say again, and it's I shouldn't be arrested for it, I shouldn't be prosecuted for it. But it's not nice, it's not kind, it's not good advocacy, and at the end of the day, it's self-defeating.
Okay. Do you think this is a particularly female slant that you're taking to bring in humanity more into the debate?
Is it a female slant? There might be something to that. And you could argue that a lot of women over the years have had done their public work through a framework of human rights rather than political life. Eleanor Roosevelt was probably the grandmother of international human rights, and the list goes on. But I don't think it's uniquely female, and maybe gender equality is partly in the end about us getting in touch with both aspects of humanity. And I don't think kindness or politeness or common decency should be a uniquely female virtue, even if I'm a woman and I value these things.
Thank you. Which maybe brings us on neatly to another question. Our website's called Totally for Women, and there seem at the moment to be quite a proliferation of feminist groups, feminist to some degree or another.
About time too. I don't know what it is exactly, but in the context of the UK, I think that maybe something happened around the time of the last general election campaign in 2010.
Right.
I think for a while, feminism had somehow gone out of fashion, or people were, gender inequality was clearly still there, bubbling away in everybody's lives, but it wasn't fashionable to call yourself a feminist.
No.
And there was, I think, a bit of a delusion gaining currency that the big struggles were over and the big fights had been won because we had formal equality legislation, and even if that legislation was dishonoured in thought and word and deed in reality. And I think that the 2010 general election incensed a lot of women, left and right and all generations, because it was so male dominated.
Okay.
And I think that had there not been a hung parliament and the drama of and the intrigue of coalition politics, the big political issue post the 2010 general election might well have been where were the women, the leaders' debates just highlighted kind of men in suits, political culture. And I heard that from so many people.
Okay.
And it kind of got packed away because of the coalition and all of that, but it's still there. And I think after that general election, a lot of women who are understandably very cross and wanting to reconnect with the struggle for equality between the sexes, and that's a fantastic thing. And so, I'm delighted that there is this proliferation of groups and projects within what we might call a modern feminist movement.
Right.
I love the idea that you've got your project for women who were born yesterday. Well, I always say I was born the day before yesterday. That's the way that I put it when someone tries to pull a fast one on me. I turn to them and I say, hang on a minute, I was born the day before yesterday, but not quite yesterday. And that's one of my little glib mottos. I think it's great that you're doing this.
Thank you.
The Women of the World Festival on the South Bank has been something particularly close to my heart.
Okay.
Founded by my friend Jude Kelly, who's a wonderful sort of arts curator and impresario and director, but also someone who's really fostered this modern feminist movement, and that festival is now catching fire all over the world. Okay. Kat Banyard runs UK Feminista, and she's barely 13 or something. No, she's a bit older. No, but I think this is all very heartening. And at Liberty, most of the majority of my younger colleagues are fantastic young women from whom I learn so much, and it's quite an exciting time for feminism.
Okay. Oh, well, it's really thrilling to hear you talk like that. I wasn't sure if you would feel that some of these groups may be carping around the edges, and that you're at Liberty much more involved with more fundamental rights and freedoms.
I think that we all have to kind of engage in different ways.
Okay, right.
Part of humanity is individuality, and there's a hell of a lot of injustice to go around.
Yeah.
And people have to focus on what motivates them. I'm just glad to see people energised and active and organised. And if I'm honest, I think that with so much injustice to go around, when I look at the world today, when I look at where we should be and where we are in 2013, not just nationally but internationally, I think gender injustice may be perhaps the biggest injustice on the planet, and the one which, if fixed, could have such great sort of positive collateral benefit to all sorts of other issues like peace and climate change and poverty and so on. If women were more empowered all over the world, first and developing world, I think we could see some very, very exciting results in all kinds of spheres.
I don't know if you heard David Attenborough say on the Today programme the other morning, he went off topic a bit and spoke about the population problem and said that generally, I think I'm paraphrasing him right, he said it would be fixed if women had control of their own bodies and were allowed to be educated. That seemed to be a wonderful summary.
I think David Attenborough is right.
Right.
That's not a difficult thing to say. I think that one of the most horrifying statistics is, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's something ridiculous, like 1 in 5 women in Sierra Leone still die in childbirth. Yeah. Imagine, I mean, that's like being some sort of Victorian woman who needs to basically write farewell letters before she goes into labour because the chances are so ridiculously high of dying in the act of giving birth. And it's absolutely astonishing. It's a scandal. And if it didn't happen to women, it wouldn't be allowed to happen. And with all the progress, all the medical and scientific and technological progress of the last century and the beginning of this one, the fact that is still tolerated is appalling. When I think about gender injustice in the world, it's deep and entrenched, and it's like an international apartheid that goes back millennia. I mean, it's extraordinary. And I think that I say that gender injustice may be the biggest injustice on the planet because I feel a little ashamed that my generation's sort of let the side down a little bit. And I think if the Pankhursts could speak to the Chakrabartis, they would be desperately impressed. I think they made enormous sacrifices and took things, quite far forward. And I think that maybe in the last 20 years we just relaxed a little bit too much.
Thank you. Could I ask on a more personal level about you? Because you were on the Women's Hour Power list, I think, earlier in the year. You're clearly regarded as a powerful woman, a powerful speaker in the UK, but powerful woman. And you're a household name now. But has that had any particularly difficult consequences for you just as a person in terms of, you have a view on you have strong opinions and people don't always like a woman with strong opinions.
I think that it's something that you have to kind of get used to. And in the end, you just decide whether to restrain yourself or whether to be true to yourself. And if you're true to yourself, how to go about doing it. And it's a constant negotiation with yourself and people around you. And I don't really know how to answer your question. I'm probably a bit of a Marmite sort of a person. But I like Marmite myself. And, I think there are times when being recognised on the street, for example, is difficult and uncomfortable. And there are times when it's really heartening, and that probably just depends on how you're feeling in your own life at the time. But the bottom line is, it's an enormous privilege to do work that you believe in and to have a voice when so many people don't have a voice.
Right.
And so I'm not going to sit around saying, oh how hard to be publicly criticised and to feel under scrutiny and to feel like Marmite, because it's an enormous privilege. If I didn't do this job, I would be sitting in the pub on a Friday evening complaining about injustice.
Right.
And instead I have the privilege to complain with not just a drink in my hand, with a microphone in my hand, and you've got one life, and that's, I'm not going to complain, even if it's sometimes difficult, and sometimes you get a level of criticism and scrutiny that is unfair, and it's perhaps particularly unfair as a woman. There are things that are written about me online in particular where everybody's brave under the cloak of anonymity.
Yeah.
Well done, chaps.
Yeah.
There are things that are occasionally a bit, misogynistic or racist. You don't need to be,
right.
Let's be clear about that. But so
it goes with the territory.
It goes with the territory,
right.
And I don't have it as hard as some people do, and it's worth it.
Do you sometimes find women are your biggest critics? Because women don't always like powerful women.
I don't know that I'm that powerful, I don't, I'm not the CEO of a multinational corporation, and I'm not a president or a prime minister or a Supreme Court judge. At the end of the day, I'm a scruffy campaigner, and occasionally you get a few knocks, but I find that people mostly are kinder than not, or at least the people that would stop you in the street normally.
Right.
Maybe it's human nature, or maybe it's a national character or something, but mostly when people stop you in the street, they stop you to be kind, and they say things like, I don't always agree with you, but I think it's really important for politicians to hold to account, and things like that. So I think when I look at the balance sheet, I've experienced, I've had quite a fortunate life, really.
Right.
If you're talking about women in the world, I've certainly had an extraordinarily fortunate life, and I haven't really got very much to complain about. I think if anything, the trick is not to be smug or complacent,
right,
or lazy, and just to remember what this is all about, and how, and to, on the one hand, remember the struggle, but on the other hand, not be so grim and worthy that you alienate people. And it's tricky, because you're actually trying to reach out to people who don't instinctively or automatically agree with you.
Yes.
And it's easy to come across as quite sort of humorless when you're talking about torture or infinite mortality, whatever it is we're talking about.
Yes.
But at the same time, this isn't rock and roll. Do you know what I mean? So how do you? And to be confident without being arrogant. I think that is the thing that I perhaps reflect on most of all, because you want to harness the strength that comes with experience and solidarity and some campaigning successes.
Yeah.
But without being superior. I always say anyone is equal, but no one is superior, and that's a personal motto that I try to cling to, and one that I try to reflect on a lot, and that I try and impress upon, younger colleagues, my son. That would be the way that I would choose to live my life, given the chance, as everyone's equal, but no one's superior. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to replace, patriarchy with another form of tyranny where we're sitting at the top of the tree.
Yeah, okay. And just a final question, really, is it's sort of linking to what you were saying. You were saying it's not rock and roll, what you're trying to sell in a way. So I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she knows about our website, and she's now completely bored by the whole thing, to the point that I'm not allowed to talk about it at home. But actually, I think she's getting a slight sneaking interest in feminism, and if that's about equal rights for women. But what would you say generally to young people out there? Why should they get involved in human rights? Why should they rock the current boat?
You see, I think the challenge for those of us who spend our working lives and our lives trying to campaign for positive change is that we have to be less abstract. And we have to be less worthy, and we have to make this matter to people, and we have to speak plain English, and we have to reach into the reality of their experience. And it's not always going to be enough to tell a heartbreaking story of a woman in Sierra Leone. and that ought to be possible. We just need to be better. We just need to be better at what we do, and we need to show the connections between over there and over here, and express to people how easy it is to ignore, what's happening to other people, and then there's nobody left to speak up for you, as in the Holocaust pen. I have no doubt already at 13 your daughter will have experienced or witnessed a whole plethora of injustice against young girls and women that she's probably already absorbed and taken for granted. And I think it's probably about reaching into that experience in the playground, in the classroom, in the newsroom, in the living room, as much as the boardroom and the Parliament chamber to make it real. And Eleanor Roosevelt again famously said, human rights begin in small places close to home.
Yes.
Places so close and so small that they'll never be found on any map of the world. But this is the experience of it. That's the answer, I think. That's how I try to engage with my son. That's how I think we all try and engage with our friends and our neighbours and our relatives in terms of issues arising right on our doorstep, or in the playground, or in the classroom, or in the family, or in the community. And when it comes to gender injustice, it's everywhere.
Yes.
And I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how people ultimately understand. And this is, it's got to be rooted in personal experience and in empathy. Because I think I found over the last dozen years of doing this work that everybody does actually love human rights. They love their own.
Yeah.
And those are people like them and people around them. It's other people's that are the problem. And so what we're trying to do is to root all of this in empathy. But with my son or your daughter or anybody else, it has to start with an understanding of what's happening on the doorstep.
Yeah.
I think it's astonishing that just this week we've had, formidable woman, the Home Secretary, saying that we should scrap the human rights now because you can't stick people on planes to be sent off to torture. These are the same politicians who are telling us that we should go to war because of human rights abuses in countries that they want to deport people to. Now, what's that about? Why are human rights abuses always a justification for war but never a justification for law and legal protection close to home? And I think it's that kind of hypocrisy and contradiction that your daughter would readily understand, and that anybody would understand. We just need to communicate it a little better.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Shami. That's
Pleasure.
really great to hear from you.